that. Oh, your arm's gone now.
That's not your house or your office.
No.
We're live. We're live.
Okay.
Thanks, Corey. You're welcome. Okay, so we had basically two agenda items tonight. One is for Scott to give us an update on the capital outlay project and where we are with that. And the second is to just discuss what items we, a calendar and events that we want to include in starting to get information about the upcoming capital project vote out to the public. So I guess I have it opposite on the agenda, but maybe Scott, if you want to start with the capital outlay project update.
Sure. Good seeing everybody again, and nice to meet you virtually, Mr. McDonald.
Oh, yes.
Same with you.
Yes. So I sent a note to John and Meg a little earlier this week. So on the capital outlay, right now, we should be getting engineering comments either later this week or the beginning of next week. That's good news. The bad news is the architectural comments are probably still 2 to 3 weeks away, based on what their website information is showing right now and the amount of time that they're taking for reviews. We have about architecturally, this was as of Monday, we have 42 projects ahead of us architecturally, and 12 ahead of us for engineering. So they've been going pretty quickly through engineering. So I think we'll get those comments quick, soon. Architectural has been a little slower, but hopefully we'll get it done faster than that. But that's what I'm thinking at this point. But given the fact that where we stand right now, I don't see us probably getting SED approval on this until at the best case scenario, probably late June. And we would want 2 to 3 weeks for bidding, minimum of 2 weeks for bidding, which would put us into mid-July. I'm concerned for two reasons about trying to bid in July. One is I don't know that we're going to get very good bid numbers to begin with, because most of the contractors are going to be, have their summer schedule filled up with schoolwork. So I don't think we're going to get aggressive, hungry numbers if we bid it in July. The other issue is if we go ahead and bid it in July just to see where the numbers are, can we get it done in 5 weeks or so, from July to, late July till end of August. So we possibly could, and we could roll that dice if we decide to. But we had also talked about at the last meeting, a fallback scenario would be doing the work over the winter break and having band and choral on the stage for part of January while we finish up the project in those rooms. So that's another scenario. So I don't think we have to make any decisions tonight. I just wanted to bring both of those options up and talk about them, so that it's on the table in front of us. If we get reviews quicker and we can get approval quicker, that might lead us to say, let's roll the dice and see what happens with a bid. And we could decide to do that anyway, but that's where we stand right now. And Kyle, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think it's something we talked about before about, falling back into a break I have seen a couple projects, roof projects come in at okay numbers recently. But this is a smaller project. Again, once we get that back from SED, we'll bring it back to you and we'll have a decision about bidding it now or later.
Yeah, the other thing I was just thinking about is I just had a bid this week for about $1.5 million worth of site work. And that came in really well. Numbers came in very well. I think the issue has been historically these smaller projects. These projects under 100,000 are tough to get contractor interest in, number one, because they're not very big projects. And so that's where I was concerned about bidding it in July, mid-July, that we might not get a lot of contractors interested. But we'll have to see where that goes. The other factor is because, we submitted this to SED prior to your budget vote. And one of the things we have to have is an affirmative budget vote on this. And then once that vote happens, your public vote happens, we've got to submit a couple of pieces of paperwork to SED to finalize the project management approval piece of it as well. So, Meg, I'll just stay in touch with you after the 16th when you can open the budget votes. We would want to we need to get a clerk's certification of your board of clerks certification of the budget vote passing, and then a copy of your popular budget, literature that you put out to the public. We need to submit that to SED as well. And that's to get the project manager sign off on the project. But we can get that and then just wait on the technical review pieces.
Scott, can you elaborate on what that project manager sign off is? I guess I don't really understand that.
So there's really three pieces to an SED approval. There's the project manager has to review all of the SED paperwork that you submit. There's a whole packet of paper, and part of that is for $100,000 projects, capital outlay projects, you have to submit a copy of your board meeting minutes that say, hey, our budget passed, and and then you have to submit some budget information that shows that the capital outlay project was outlined in your budget information. So that's the PM part, project manager part that needs approval. Then the engineering piece, because we do have some lighting work that's being done, that's involved, the ceiling work with the lighting. And then the architectural piece is actually the flooring, replacement and the ceiling tile replacement. So we have those three pieces.
Scott, I have a question. Is there any added cost with the abatement, the air quality testing, or any of that during the winter months compared to warmer months?
Shouldn't be, I wouldn't think. No, this is so minor that
Okay.
I wouldn't think you'd see any difference really. And the abatement piece of it, remember, is the mastic underneath the floor tile, and that would be done if we did have to do the work over the winter break. That would be the very first thing that's done, is that piece while you're on break.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but once we get favorable bids and we go forward the project, or during that time, we're going to go to the district and yourselves with an RFP for monitoring services that will be hired directly through the school. And sometimes it's the actual designer. So it could be ATL, it could be somebody else, but
right. And I don't know if BOCES offers the actual monitoring service or not, because I know they did the testing for us, but
I don't think so. I'll ask Rick and see.
Yeah, I don't think they do either. They probably don't want that liability.
No.
They don't, Scott. I can answer that.
Yeah. So we'll go. We'll have to get a monitor on board just to give us the clean airs and stuff for that.
Yep.
So that's where we stand with that piece of it.
Your reason that it's going to be a crapshoot to see if we can get it done this summer, because everything has to fall into line perfectly, I guess is how you would put it. And the only thing that's favorable to me is the latest school can start is this year on the 9th, I think it is, because Labor Day until 7th. Labor Day is the latest that can possibly be. So, there is a an opening there for us to do it, because actually the project shouldn't take 4 weeks from start to finish it.
It shouldn't take that long, no. But, and the other option to consider, I guess, maybe to think about is if we're running, if we decide to do it this summer and we can get it bid and get it underway, we could look at it and, maybe the first week or two of school, that might be where maybe they're on the stage for that,
Right.
for that first week or two. But then you got it done and it's wrapped up and it's out of the way. So
Yeah.
that might be certainly an option to think about.
And
as
then
well.
you haven't got a monkey with kids, being occupied in areas where you have asbestos abatement,
Right.
in the summer. That's my biggest fear or concern. That
Yeah, you might also, I know things are changing constantly for schools about opening up. I mean, I think there's a 20 bulletin list that went to schools to look at for requirements to open, which my understanding is very difficult from Department of Health. So I know schools I think have the end of this month possibly to respond to that. But I guess the longer this goes, we figure out when schools can open, we'll also keep that in mind. When the bids, when we get SED approval.
Right. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't necessarily say let's push this off. I think it really depends on when we get approval and how we're feeling at that point. If we want to go for it, let's go for it and see. The worst, the apps, let's say we do get little interest and we end up with bids that are over budget. That would be the worst case scenario. You get an over budget bid in July. Well, then you would have the opportunity to fall back to a winter bidding cycle then, and probably receive better numbers at that point. So you're
I think
muted.
for me, one of the
Meg.
biggest.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was just saying Meg was muted.
I know that we have to let state ed finish the architectural and engineering review before we can go to bid, because in case there's changes or anything. But is there anything that we can or should be doing to prepare it to go out to bid so that we can turn that around really quickly if we get, depending on if we decide to go out to bid, when we get their approval, we're ready to go out the door with that?
There's really not a lot we have to do to be prepared to bid. I mean, we're pretty much ready.
Okay.
We would just have to incorporate any comments that, they give us in their.
Okay. I just didn't know if there were things you needed from the district or things like that would help get that scheduled and ready to go.
No, because the only thing we have to do is, once we decide to go out to bid, we do have to get you the notice to bidders, and you have to put that in your local paper.
Yep.
But there's no sense doing that, and we really don't want to do that until we have a bid date and have approval.
Okay.
For me, as much as I like long-term planning and having everything laid out, honestly, the way the governor is kind of the flipping the coin and things are changing on a daily basis almost, I think we really ought to just focus on getting through the budget vote and then seeing where we're at and then setting our timelines a little bit slower so that we know where we're at. Because if he extends the budget out again, that just delays everything else one more time. I think it's good to be prepared, but I don't know we could probably talk for another hour on dates and strategies and then not have it mean anything tomorrow.
Right. Well, we certainly can't move forward with the project until we have the public approve the budget vote. That's step one.
Right.
So
You mean when?
when? Sorry, you're correct. When the public approves. You are absolutely.
Not if.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on that then, on capital outlay before we move to the larger capital project?
Not on our end.
Okay. I guess moving on then to the capital project. Really, I was just looking to brainstorm and get people's thoughts as far as what we should schedule and plan as far as a public outreach session in anticipation of an October or November vote. I don't know, Scott, it might be helpful to have you review the sort of things that you see typical in a district when you do this. I had mentioned in an email to some of you, and I think I put on the agenda the idea of doing a video. I think it would be great if we could come up with just a couple-minute clip that talks about the project, give some maybe visuals of what it's projected to look like, as well as the current conditions that we're trying to improve. And I was, I think, Scott, you mentioned this in a prior meeting, but I'd love to come up with some sort of a tagline for the project that just encompasses that we're trying to deal with some critical needs in the infrastructure so that we can get that taken care of in order to then build on that in the future.
Paving your future.
Paving the way to the future. Yeah. Just something like that. And then, in light of community meetings and not really being able to have them, the video is great. It lets us put information out there, but we need to be thinking about how we can have some communication with the public that's two-way, where they can, if maybe we can have community informational meetings, but if we can't, how can we create sort of a dialogue so they can ask questions and provide feedback?
Well, they already have your phone number, Meg.
Yours too, Tracy.
From our perspective, I mean, obviously this is, quite a bit different scenario than what we would normally do for getting ready for a bond vote. But typically we'd put some information together for your website. You'd have a frequently asked questions piece where you could go through and sort of, and I have some questions and things that I've used on other projects that I could, share with you, Meg, and you could send it out to everybody and we could build upon that. And I think that's good to have on your website. I'd like the idea of the video. I think that makes a lot of sense. You could link that to your website. You could also, I don't know if you have a Facebook page or whatever public page, get that on there. I've seen these done before. It might be, sorry to put Mr. McDonald on the spot here, but it might be a good way to have him, talk about this project as a new, and how excited he is about it being a new, the new superintendent. It kind of gets his face out in front of the public, and also it puts a good spin on it. Most of the videos that I've seen done have either been done by the superintendent talking about it, or the superintendent and a few board members and administration officials sharing the questions. It doesn't, you don't want it to be too slick. You want it to just be sort of fact based. So I think that's a good idea. And the project itself, you're really hitting on some things that I think people can understand. You're taking care of your roofs, you're taking care of energy infrastructure, improving, replacing aging lighting and putting new energy efficient fixtures in. You're trying to save energy. You're fixing the parking lots, which I think everybody in the community knows needs work. So, I mean, and you're also improving the main entrance, helping that make that more secure. So those are all items that are, people can understand those, I think, and get behind them, hopefully. And so I think a video of, 4 or 5 minutes in duration or whatever makes a lot of sense to talk about those items and explain why it's important for you, and to shed some light on the history of, that we've been looking at these things for a long time and we're trying to address them. And so I think, that's definitely a good idea. The other thing that you'll want to do, but this doesn't really need to happen a little bit until you get closer to the vote, are sort of newsletters and informational flyers that you want to send out to people. What I've seen is typically, you might send like a 2-page or a 4-page flyer that incorporates some of the things we've talked about. You might have a section on that is frequently asked questions. You have some graphics that show what the project is, that board that we put together that we looked at the last meeting, you could have on there. you've got something on there that explains this is why we think it's, the right time to do this. And you put important dates on there, when the vote is, when you're going to have, public meetings, or how you're going to have public meetings. So those kinds of things are good to get out. And then usually, sometimes there's a second, just a half page, postcard or something that goes out like the week before the vote, just to remind people to come out to vote. So I usually see the 4-page flyer go out, 3 to 4 weeks before the vote. And then the postcard kind of thing go out maybe a week before the vote. So that's a little ways off before that, but it takes some time to put those together. So we want to be thinking about that over the summer and start getting those together, so that we have them. And then obviously the public meetings, that's the big question, is will we be able to have them? Hopefully by fall, things will be loosened up enough that we could have small gatherings and be able to do that at the school. This is not an overly complex project to try to sell to the community. I think you're hitting some very key things that need to be done from an infrastructure standpoint. So I think that's the message you want to have, is that, we're not trying to do a $30 million project here that's got a bunch of wish lists. These are all things that we all feel are critically important and need to be done.
So if we work backwards, and let's say we were planning like an early, let's say we were planning a late October budget vote, capital project vote. So that would mean end of September, you would want that newsletter to go out. So maybe community meetings, beginning of September, end of August. So that means that like the video and that information should start being distributed end of July, beginning of August.
Well, I think the first thing that we ought to do is, and I know we don't have to, this doesn't have to be a binding decision, but I do think we need to decide what our target date is for the actual vote. If you remember, we had been talking about a vote in the November timeframe. I think we had used November 17th. It was just a Tuesday in November that we looked at. November and December are typically, historically, the best months for passage of a bond vote. So if we could do it earlier, that's fine if you wanted to do it. But I think we need to decide, because everything leads backwards from the date of the vote. So I think we should decide, what the target is, and then work our schedule backwards from that.
For me, any vote that we're going to go out and do, I don't think we want to move it up, considering the fact that Dr. McDonald is going to be joining us this year. I don't want to give the impression to anyone that we're rushing him into something that he's got to come up to speed with, or we're trying to shove something quickly. Where I think if we do the mid-November or even the beginning of December, that gives us time that everybody is very comfortable with where we're at and with the way we're stepping forward with this. And I think we've done this process so slowly to try to be methodical with it, and not to rush anything, and make sure we've got all of our T's crossed and I's dotted. I just hate to fall from that at this point.
The only concern I have with those months is November. You have the general election, so people are coming out a week, 2 weeks before the proposed vote date. If you hold it any later than that, you're dealing with weather conditions, which may hinder people from being able to get out to vote in our area. That would be my only concern, or wanting to come out, to vote, depending on the weather. And not that I would want to rush it, but I would be mindful of that, thinking about a date as well. You can't have it too close to the general election, because they may not want to come right back out again.
Well, the other thing to consider is, will we be able to even do a regular election, or is it going to have to be all mail-in?
Well, our primaries are, they can come to the polls. So I think the polls are still gonna be open, but as far as the, for the capital project, that, I don't know. I don't
Right,
know.
yeah, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
that,
If the
that's-
numbers start going up again and we start, hearing that again, it could go the other way again.
When's the general election? November 3rd?
Yes.
It's the first Tuesday after the first Monday, that was, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So like if we want on the 27th of October, that's just gonna be pushing it. You go to the November 10th, that's gonna be pushing it. So yeah, you'd wanna go at least the 17th, maybe even the 24th. Just
The
to get a-
24th is probably too close to Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Right.
2 days, yeah, 2 days before. Yep.
I mean,
So-
would everybody be comfortable tentatively using the 17th as just a planning date?
I would.
I'm fine with it as a planning date. And it may work out to be that ends up being our permanent date. I'm not all that comfortable about moving it any farther forward.
Yeah, I think we don't necessarily have to publicize that the vote is that date, but at least having a date lets us move backwards to when we need to start getting information out to the public. We can always push the vote out further, but at least,
Right.
that would give us a way to plan backwards. So if we look at November, well, I guess, did everybody get a chance to respond to if they're okay tentatively working with the 17th?
Meg, I'm just gonna share on the screen that tentative schedule that we had too, so because I don't know if Dr. McDonald had seen that yet or not.
Okay.
Oops,
Yeah.
I can't share it. Somebody's gotta let me share. I don't know if that's Corey or not.
I have it on my wall here. I can turn my camera around.
Corey, you're muted. Hold on.
Thank you. I've made you
Oh,
a
I
co-host.
can share now. Okay. So can everybody see this screen now?
Mm-hmm.
So if you look down here where my cursor is, so we had a tentative schedule of, November 17th for the vote date. And then we were saying that, this 3 to 4 weeks prior to the vote is when we would be doing the sort of the push for the public presentations. And that's also the timeline for when you want the flyers to be going out as well. And backing it up, that's when the board has to do their official actions no later than the end of September to say that, yes, we've done seeker. Yes, we're authorizing the vote to go forward. So really from now through September is when we could have more public meetings if you wanted to do that, or virtual public meetings. We should start putting the information together that we need for the flyers. And we could work on the video. I think the question that might have to be thought about and determined is, when do you actually sort of on a board level start saying to the public, hey, we're going out, we're going to go out for a vote and we want to start getting this information out to you. Because that's that's when it's out in the public domain and really, people can watch this now, but until we've pushed it out on the website in a big way, it's not official, I guess.
Yeah, I believe too that if we're gonna send any kind of newsletter flyers out, and again, it's no rush to pick that date, but people are looking for what's the project, how much, and when is it?
And I think that kind of information we should get that on your website sooner rather than later. The frequently asked questions, what's the project about? What I've seen most districts do is they actually create a capital project section on their website. I know you did that in your last capital project back in 2015 or 2015. And, so we might want to, look at some of that and dust some of that off, because there was a frequently asked questions page on there and some other things like that. So, and And I thought those were really well done back then, back in 2015.
Scott, wouldn't we have to wait until we received approval from SED?
Not for going out to public vote, no.
Okay,
The SED approval process isn't until we're done. That's way down the road. That's after the public approves it. We've designed it and it's been submitted to SED. So there is no SED approval to go out to vote.
okay.
So I would think this is something that you wouldn't want to go out publicly until probably at least the end of July. You'd want to get through your reorg meetings, and have Dr. McDonald set in with the reorg. Plus, I would personally kind of like to see how the video process goes through the graduation. And if that goes very well, we could use that type of format and we could video maybe the building, the grounds, and put some type of like documentary together, and then also include the photos of the project. So you would have like our existing, and then what the process is or the project is, and then what we're looking to end up with, and have that linked up. But I just, again, I'm not trying to stalemate. I want to walk and not run and trip. That's all. So.
It is good information to have out there, to have, whether it's in your video or in your presentations, to have photographs of existing conditions. So, pictures of the, crumbling asphalt, pictures of, areas of roofing that, you can obviously tell, need work. Same thing for ceiling and lighting and things like that. So those are
water stains and
exactly,
all that.
Exactly. Yep. And those are things that really, those photographs could be taken by anyone almost any time, and just compiled someplace so that we can look through them and sort of pick the worst of the worst, I guess, so to speak.
So just to summarize here, I've kind of worked with that November 17th date and worked backwards, that a reminder postcard would be the 10th of November. Our public meetings and newsletter would be somewhere around the middle of October, about 4 weeks prior. We would work to get social media and website information up in August and September, and we'll work now and through July on just gathering that all that information and working on a video and working on frequently asked questions and things for the website. Does that reflect what we're looking at?
Yeah.
I think so. Personally, for me, that would make me, seeing is kind of believing, to put the faith in the video. And that's why I was kind of, we'll know here in a few weeks on how the videos go with the graduation. My thought was just, so even if we wait till July 1st and we start that, we're not that far off from July as it is right now. And then, but we could start getting the photographs and everything together, because, I don't know, we may just come up with something that we love that, or something that we would rather tweak it this way or do that. So.
Well, that's just it. Starting in July and compiling all that gives us a chance to really review it before releasing it.
I participated in this training last week, and it was about sharing information with the public about the budget and capital project votes. And they showed this video of a capital project vote. I can't remember what district it was from, but their transportation director was a graduate of that school. And from the playground, there's a fence, and then there's the transportation garage. And he talked about how as a kid, when he got in trouble, he had to look through the fence at the transportation garage because they made him stand against the fence. And now he's the transportation director. And he went on to show this old bus that was parked in the weeds that he used to ride, that they used to store their spare parts and things because they didn't have enough room in their facility. The way that it tugged at your heart, nobody could vote no to that.
Right.
It was really good. So we've just got to figure out how to get those perspectives.
Thank God I never got in trouble when I was in school.
I'm sure.
All right.
Is there anything that anybody can think of as far as ways to communicate this to the public that we're not thinking of that we haven't touched on, via the website, a video, social media, meetings, anything else that maybe we're forgetting?
No, I think the flyers and the website cover enough of the population. I mean, the flyers would go out to everyone, so they could choose whether they wanted to participate in the vote and, or if they needed more information, they'll know how to contact somebody. And then, of course, with it being on the website, if we could put a tab up there stating, capital project, and they can reference that tab whenever they feel, those that are computer savvy. But at least the flyers and the postcards and stuff would go out to those that are not, and they can still be well informed.
I think it's important at some point, and I'm not sure exactly how, but to have an opportunity for the public to provide feedback and suggestions and to really feel like it's heard. I want to be cautious about us going out and saying, here's what we're going to do. We've decided this is what it's going to be. But to say, okay, here's what we're planning. We want to know what you think. We want your support for this project, and to allow them an opportunity through whatever means we have to come up with to really feel like they can let us know what they think and that we listen and take it into consideration.
So like, are you thinking a survey type thing along that lines, or have them respond if we can hold larger groups, like a meeting, a community meeting? Once the information gets out there, then they can come with their questions?
Yeah, I think a public meeting would absolutely accomplish it if we're
Right.
allowed to have them at that point in time in October. If for some reason we're not, I think we have to be creative.
Yep, I agree.
Not, and maybe along that lines, we could even set a email address up specifically for the project, that questions for the project could be sent to, and then we could answer the questions and post them on our Facebook page instead of having the questions or the comments go directly to the Facebook page.
Yeah, and maybe early on with some of those social media posts, we could include something like, if you have questions or comments about the proposed project, please submit them too. And then we
Right.
can be prepared to respond to those when we actually have a public meeting. We got these comments and here's our, here's
Right.
how we address them or react to them.
Meg, you've also got those TV screens, monitors that are in the halls, and not that you'd want to necessarily have something going on those, during all day long, but we do have events at night. And when parents come in, they could see those as well, or you could take some of those flyers and have them on tables as people come in the area, just to pick up and go by, and as they go by as well. Just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, we've also, we've done poster boards that, so that drawing that we did that showed the, what the scope of the project was, basically. You basically put that on a poster board, and then you put a little more information on there, like vote on this date at this location and whatever other things you want to put on there. And you put those in the lobby of the high school, you put those in the lobby of the middle school, you put it in Townsend. So when people are just coming in and out on a daily basis, they see those. You put those out, a month or so before, just so that it starts really, people get it in their mind that it's coming.
Do you ever do them, Scott, with any of the local businesses?
The poster boards,
Yes.
put them in the businesses.
Yes, thinking more like the restaurants, for example, if they get to go back to full staff and open, where there's, a handful of them in the community, where you might be able to do something like that, just with the brief scenario of what's going on, an overview with, like you just said, the vote date and that type of thing too.
I haven't personally, but it's not a bad idea. I mean, it's something you could discuss. I think, obviously the business owner would have to be agreeable to that, but.
Exactly. And we'd want some support from the business owner to kind of pay attention to it too, so that something else isn't getting stuck to it. I mean, I'm just, you'd want that cooperation and that partnership with it, but I'm just, didn't know if it ever been tried in your experience.
Not personally, but that's, like I said, that's not a bad idea.
We were on Boatsy Zoom this morning with Ken Howard of the DCMO print shop, and they can make a lot of that stuff. These, as COVID-19 related signs and stuff like that. I just had in the back of my mind, I go, after things kind of calm down a little bit, why couldn't they make signs for us for stuff like that, to put different places? to put in the entryways of our buildings to maybe put in different businesses.
Trying to call up. I have some examples of ones we've just done.
Or you do them yourself?
Yeah, we actually print them. We can print them
Oh,
right
you do?
out. So let me just call. I'm calling up one right now.
So Scott, while you're looking at that, I think also, I mean, I joined into this team. You guys are in a conversation well before I joined in. But it does sound like possibly you need to provide some information of why you're not doing some things in the project, like the elementary school. That might be just from my conversations hearing from you. The community might say, well, why aren't we doing anything at the elementary school? And maybe explain that the current plan with going after funds and why it's not in the capital project. It may be just as important of what we're actually doing for the project.
Good point.
So what I'm showing on the screen here, this is a project that we got approved back in March at Port Jervis. And so one slide sort of showed what was going on with the different fields. And they were actually changing buildings, an elementary school into a middle school and a middle school into an elementary. But, this was one board. And then we had, and you can see that it's got the vote, please vote on March 11th. And then it's got the polling locations listed. And then this other board, they were doing an addition. So you can see the addition here, but they've got just a quick summary of the project finances, how it's going to be done, the size of the referendum. There was no tax increase, and just a little graphic that shows how it's going to be paid for with building aid, capital reserve, fund balance, that kind of stuff. So those are some of the things you can do kind of in-house to, put together. And these were just set up in the lobby of the schools to show people what the project entailed. And they were also on the website. We also used them on the website as well.
Well, I think that gives us a pretty good start. I think we've got our work cut out for us putting together information. Any other comments that anybody wants to throw in on that topic?
The only comment I would have is that if you do decide to go out with the vote on the 17th of November, you do have a regular meeting scheduled that night. So you may just want to move your regular meeting date so you don't have two events happening the same night.
Thank you.
Okay.
I also want to bring up something that was talked about a long time ago, and it's not important to the vote and getting us to the vote, but the soil boring before or after the vote. I know there was some talk about let's just wait possibly till after the vote. I don't know if the group had a decision on that or we want to wait until we're a little closer.
I know Graydon's not here tonight, and I know he has a in-depth understanding of that sort of thing.
Okay, we can wait.
I think based on Kevin can chime in too, because I know that he has definitely more knowledge about it than I do. But I think based on the assurances that Scott had mentioned at a previous meeting, that you guys have a very high level of confidence that what you're proposing for the parking in front of the building can happen. I think there was less concern to have those done immediately.
I'd agree.
And there's a cost to that. That was the other factor, is that, did you want to spend those funds prior to a successful referendum? Because if the referendum fails, then, you've still got those costs to deal with. So that's why I'd say probably 95 or 98% of districts do the testing after the vote. They don't want to do that cost up front.
Yeah, and I'm only bringing this up as well, and it doesn't have to be decided today, but as long as we get some direction from you, that can be just recorded so that, we don't get closer and there's some some confusion about when is that information coming.
Right.
So everybody's on the same page, but again, we can wait till the next meeting or meeting after.
Kevin, did you have a
Oh,
comment?
sorry.
I'm I think you hit on the head with our last discussion. I mean, at first there was some conversation and some discussion on it. After we discussed it with the vote process going through, not necessarily, I guess, absolutely opposed to that by no means. I think Grade and I are both individuals that are our jobs. We tend to have things more in exact quantities, so you know what you're dealing with and not that rolling end zone. You know what I mean? But also knowing that some of the product that is available to us locally here to use for sub-base materials and that type of thing. We have some very good resources here locally for that. And after we had the discussion of using the grindings of the asphalt and some of that, we wouldn't have to, we're planning on using that back into our sub-base. We could build a lot of sub-base right there, even if we had to go on lesser materials in the corner of the parking lot. So I'm pretty comfortable that that's not going to throw us for a major loop. So I agree with Scott that if we did wait to after the vote, I think we have plenty of time to do those borings under that project and then adapt to that. So
I would agree with that. Why spend the money, up front if it's not going to pass?
Yeah, and the cost was not insignificant. Scott had provided us a quote back in February, and it was in the $10,000 to $12,000 range. So it would be a significant expense that we would be at risk for. So if we're not, if we're not terribly concerned, if we have some confidence that we can perform the project as proposed, I think the idea was to wait.
All right, I got that written down to wait until after the vote, until if I hear anything differently, then we can address it again. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. The only other thing I can think of is, Corey, I don't know if if you can check quickly or not, but I don't think we have a next meeting scheduled. So I don't know if we want to look at maybe scheduling one at the end of July to take a look at the public information, mid to late July, to look at the public information pieces that we've been able to put together so that then they can have any tweaking necessary to be ready to go in early August.
Okay.
Then we probably want to be able to talk about the capital outlay in the project or when the budget passes, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
I could send out an email with some dates.
Okay.
I think on the capital outlay, if the budget, when the budget passes on the 16th, that will gather the information we need to get the project management approval, and then we're just at sort of the mercy of the technical review. Once we receive full sign off from SCD on that, I think we would want to probably call kind of a quick impromptu meeting to decide, are we going to roll the dice and go, or are we not? So.
Scott, are you guys seeing with this COVA delays? Are other projects holding back now? So our contractors, are they all getting booked up, or are they still a little free? For example, one of the things I'm experiencing in my line of work is the big vendors that I'm used to having to be a month out or 2 months out. They're not, because a lot of other municipalities are holding tight to their budget of the money they have because they're just not sure what's coming down the road for them. So I don't know, is that type of effect happening with school districts also?
So I personally know of one project that was planning for a fall vote but was really back in several months ago, actually right before this hit. We were just starting discussions for that, but they were saying, well, let's plan it through the spring and then we'll put it out to vote in the fall. They decided to hold off. That's the only one though that I'm aware of in our company. Kyle, I don't know if you know of any others out in the Saratoga area. I have not heard of any that are delaying because of that yet.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's sort of all over the place. For a brief time, you could have probably gotten some great numbers because everybody was on hold, or there was confusion if you're on hold. And now construction is going back. And
Okay.
I'm even seeing a district that has 2021 project phase being put in now. They're working on it right now. So they had a 2-phase project, 2020, 2021, and they're just not stopping. So that contractor obviously isn't going to be bidding for this summer, any other work. So it depends how projects are going with the other school districts right now, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of unknowns out there, but I certainly haven't seen anybody really pulling back wholesale, other than, like I said, that one project that I'm aware of.
All right. So I was just curious on where our numbers may end up on this, smaller project. For
It's heavy asbestos too. I mean, most asbestos contractors are right in the beginning of summer for school work. And then they have to be out because then the real work starts, and the real work, but a lot of the other work starts. So they may be free at the end of the summer because they've already been pushed out of that area of schools.
Right.
So you may see favorable numbers that give asbestos contractors abatement that are looking for work.
All right.
So it sounds like we'll try to schedule a meeting for mid to late July to review draft public information materials. But if we have to call a quicker meeting to respond to the timeline for the capital outlay project, we'll do that sooner.
Right.
Okay.
Meg, FYI, I'm just looking out at July. Tentatively, I'm scheduled to be out the week of the 20th. I'm not 100% sure of that, but I'm tentatively scheduled right now. And I'll probably find out when my wife tells me it's firm.
Okay. Maybe we can try to hit the week before that.
Yeah.
Let's see what works for everybody.
Yep.
Okay.
One question for you on the Townsend Street, Townsend School projects that we're looking at potentially over there. One of the things that was thrown to me when I was looking at the dumping of the spoil material, if we have to, is do we test that tank regularly? Or have we pressure test that tank, or do we just stick it and see the levels?
We see the levels.
Fuel tank. I'm sorry, John, I didn't hear you.
We see the levels.
Okay.
Yeah, it's we stick it once a month, and the rest of the time we have a Omnitech readout, and it's been at like 1,552 gallons for the past 2 years. And
Yep.
and the stick has been exactly the same.
Okay. Just looking, just curiosity. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, I think we're all set unless anybody's got anything else.
Good.
Right. Thank you. Good night.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everybody.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.